the Week 6 analysis of the NFL season. I'm Brian Duchaine.
And I'm Corey Sullivan.
And we're back for yet another NFL breakdown episode. So we're going to start it off. Thursday night game. Last Thursday, we saw the Broncos and the Chargers. I don't know about you, but to me, it looked like the Broncos looked absolutely pathetic the first half of the game. Chargers looked absolutely pathetic the second half of the game. So you put those together, you get some bad football. What do you think about that game?
To be honest, I think I thought it was a good game. It was a defensive game, although, rather boring. Both teams couldn't move the ball inside the red zone. The Chargers stalled out a lot. Josh Lambo, the MVP of the game, 4 for 4 field goals. It's rare that you see a field goal kicker or just a kicker in general, place kicker, whatever you'd like to call him, be the MVP of the game. But, he really produced. Melvin Gordon was moving the ball between the 20s, but the Chargers just couldn't get it in the end zone. And then the Broncos just looked bad. I don't think they should have given up on Paxton Lynch. I think, starting a rookie and then making him sit on the bench again ruins their psyche more than just rolling with them and letting them learn the ins and outs of the everyday NFL. So I don't think that Trevor Siemian was very good, and I think they should have rolled with Lynch. I liked what Trevor Booker in the beginning of the season. I said that Booker would be, eating into C.J. Anderson's carries for the Broncos, and he is. He's getting deeper and deeper into them, and I see, especially with his pass catching ability, if he can hang on to the ball, that he overtakes C.J. Anderson, who is good, but for just some reason I don't really like him. I don't think there's anything special about him, and outside of that, the wide receivers didn't really produce. With a guy like Demaryius Thomas, you expect him to be near the 100-yard mark and a touchdown, along with the elites of that position. Odell and all those guys, Antonio Brown, are usually around that each and every game, and to have almost, I think, close to 40 yards for your number one guy, it's going to be hard to win games, and especially when your running game isn't working. And Siemian just, he didn't produce against the Chargers, and their defense isn't that great in general. And so it was great to see Melvin Gordon do work, and it was great to see the Chargers finally hang on and pick up a victory there in the second half, although they almost gave that one away for the fourth game in a row. So, I think it was good that the Chargers finally, closed out a game. How did you feel about this Thursday night game?
Well, we saw Emmanuel Sanders go out briefly in that game, and Benny Fowler came in, Michigan State's finest, picked up right where Emmanuel Sanders left off, catching that touchdown pass, putting him in position to win. Then there was an absolutely pathetic onside kick. I don't know how that got through. You saw the Chargers call a timeout after the ball goes in the air. It goes straight to the Chargers guy who grabs it, game over. But they called a timeout first. So they give him another chance. The ball, I don't know what that onside kick was, had some kind of baseball spin to it or something, but poorly executed on the Chargers side of it. And you could see all those guys sweating, just thinking they're about to lose. And their defense came through at the end of the game. And I was saying when we were watching it, I was saying, there's no way Siemian's going to get it to the end zone. And then the announcers right after that say, oh, Siemian can get it to the end zone easy. He can throw it 60 yards. He couldn't even throw it 45 into the end zone. He came up short. So, it was not a real good showing, I don't think, on either side. But like you said, Chargers come out and finally get a win in probably the most dramatic fashion you could probably see from the Chargers when they're up 21-3 and almost lose the game, which I don't know how they almost lost that game, but they did almost lose. Not lose, but almost. And then we can move on to San Francisco and Buffalo. Big news this week. Colin Kaepernick is going to come off the bench, start for the 49ers. What kind of impact do you see Kaepernick having, or if any impact? He could come out the exact same as Blaine Gabbert did and just kind of look like trash, or he can be a totally different quarterback than Blaine Gabbert and go out and change the 49ers season. What do you think about this one?
Like you said, big news here. Kaepernick, I believe, restructured his deal, $14.5 million, none of it guaranteed. It's an audition for him to go to another team. I think that Chip Kelly talking bad about his quarterback, pretty much all season, saying that he was a shell of himself and just talking down on him was weird altogether. And I don't think that Chip Kelly's that type of guy. I know that Shady McCoy had issues with him when they were in Philadelphia, and was really negative on him, saying that he was, I believe, said he was a racist guy. But it doesn't make sense why Chip Kelly would say that about his quarterback. And I think that it's not Kelly really talking. I think that it's Jed York, the owner of the 49ers. He's a snake. Jim Harbaugh, who's a great coach. Obviously, you see what he's doing in Michigan right now. His team's amazing. And it's all the defense, and that's how you win in the NFL. You have a great defense. And when Harbaugh was there, they had a great defense. I think the year that they fired him, he was 8-8, which is pretty decent. It's not getting you to any Super Bowls, but Jeff Fisher would kill for some more 8-8 seasons on his resume. But I just think that it comes from Jed York, and York is just one of those guys that controls the team. He's kind of like Jerry Jones, but without the winning, if you will. So yeah, I think that Kaepernick, all the odds are stacked against him. His own organization is stacked against him, and I think he's going to perform. He usually does. He's clutch player, comes up big, except when he plays Seattle. He just tends to always have his worst game of his career, and gives Seattle fans a reason to like the 49ers a little less. But he's good. You think back to that Super Bowl run the Seahawks made, I believe week 15. The Seahawks had to go down there and were fighting for that home field advantage, and Kaepernick came up huge on their last drive to keep the drive going, and ran the clock out. Big first down run, and sent Seattle, the Super Bowl champions, home because of the ability that he adds to the team. And another negative for the 49ers is I believe that they lost Navarro Bowman, potentially for the whole season. That's their star defensive player since Patrick Willis has been gone. Also, Ray Armstrong out for them, and Jeremy Curley, their potential number one receiver since Torrey Smith has been invisible all year, is nursing an ankle injury, and we all know ankle injuries in football is not good. When you're not at full speed, you can't perform like you want to. And so like I said, all the odds stacked against Kaepernick, especially against this Bills team. Tyrod he's playing all right. Not playing great, but preserving games. Shady McCoy, obviously one of the great, the good, very good running backs in the league. But no help from the receivers. Robert Woods is decent, but without Sammy Watkins, this team, it just really isn't going. And even when Watkins was healthy, he wasn't really doing too much work. Tyrod has been struggling to get him the ball. But the defense has been playing well, and I think that the Bills have a more talented team. But I think that Kaepernick being back in his ability to get around, I think the 49ers take this one. How do you feel about this game?
Oh, I think Kaepernick brings more to the table than Gabbert does. You can run the read option more efficiently with Kaepernick. At some point, Kaepernick's passing, I guess, pinpoint passing, just something happened to it. And I don't know what happened with Kaepernick throwing the football. I like how Kaepernick can get out and run. He's a fast guy that can just get out of the pocket and nothing's there. He can take off like that NFC Championship where I believe he ran for 70 yards on one play after he escaped the pocket, and eventually somebody caught him and took him down. But with a guy that fast, I don't really care if he can throw the ball or not. If there's a guy that fast, I would probably start a running back over Blaine Gabbert at this point if they can get outside of the pocket and take off. So, I mean, you can use whatever excuse you want about Kaepernick not starting, but when it comes down to it, Gabbert just couldn't get the job done. And like you said, this is more of a trial period for Kaepernick and an audition for him to come out and show what he can do. And I think if anything, they're just going to try more trick plays and that kind of stuff, get Kaepernick out of the pocket, try some stuff we haven't seen before because Gabbert just didn't have that creativity. But Buffalo's defense looking absolutely solid. We saw him shut out New England. Granted, it was a Tom Brady-less New England team, but I'm going Buffalo. Buffalo's the pick by 7 in Vegas. I'm going to stick by that pick from the Vegas experts, and I'm saying Buffalo takes this one.
I like it. Nothing wrong with that. Especially with the 49ers defense, not very good. One of the worst in the league, always allowing, top rushers. David Johnson tore him up. Ezekiel Elliott tore him up. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Shady McCoy did the same. No matter where they are, Shady McCoy is a very good running back. So, I could see your Bills pick. But moving on, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, who lost their first matchup of the season last week to your boys out in Detroit. Shout out to the D. And they are facing the Washington Redskins. Who do you got in this one?
I think Philadelphia rebounds in this one. The Vegas pick in this one is Washington by 3. Not really sold on that. And I know we've talked about it before. I'm just not really a huge fan of anybody in this entire division. I think the division's weak. You saw Philadelphia, who was undefeated going to Detroit, who the Lions, of course, they lost by 1 touchdown every game that they've lost this season. But then they go out there, they put themselves in the position to win. And then you got Ryan Matthews chucking the ball on the ground and pretty much giving it back to him. And then Carson Wentz throws that game-ending pick to him. And I just feel like Philadelphia is going to get it together for this one against Washington. I think it's a more winnable game against Washington than it is against Detroit. I know I picked Philadelphia to beat Detroit last week, but they were in position to win that one. I think this one they can put away Washington a little bit easier. So I'm going to go with Philadelphia in this one. I don't think Carson Wentz throws a pick at the end of the game this time. He's looked pretty good every time he's started. And then you got guys on the other side, Josh Norman, Deshaun Jackson. Josh Norman can only go so far. And I think they're going to throw to the other side of him. He's going to get some yards, whoever the Philadelphia receiver is, whether it's Jordan Matthews or if they throw to some other scrub. It doesn't really matter at that point. But, I know you're not a huge Jordan Matthews guy, and I think Doug Baldwin has surpassed Jordan Matthews as far as receivers go. And I know you call him Doug Baldwin 2.0 at one point, but he's looking like Doug Baldwin 0.5 at this point. So I'm going to go with Philadelphia, even though they don't have a whole lot going for them after they're coming off of a loss to Detroit. But I think somebody else is going to step up for Philadelphia. I don't know who that is yet, but I think Josh Norman is going to have a day. But on the other side of Josh Norman, whoever is covering the other receivers, they're going to get burned. And I'm just going to stick with Philadelphia at this point because I'm just not sold on Washington at all, even though I'm not sold on Philadelphia. I'm more sold on Philadelphia than I am Washington.
Man, I'll agree with you. I think that Philly has this one locked up. I am Kirk Cousins' biggest least fan of all time. I don't like that. is what some might say. I don't like Cousins. I don't think Matt Jones can get it done. I'm a big fan of Deshaun Jackson. I love Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon. I'm a big fan of Jordan Reed. Is a great tight end, a really good tight end. I don't want to say great. He's a really good tight end, and Norman is one of the really, really good defensive players in the NFL. So Washington has good people on their team, but with no quarterback or a quarterback that I don't think is very good and virtually no running game, it's going to be hard to beat this Eagles team. This Eagles defense is something that we haven't seen before, especially when Chip Kelly was there. They're very talented. They don't put up big stats, but they're just a very solid unit. Carson Wentz, he would still have no turnovers if it wasn't for a desperation pick during Darius Slay's 3 minutes of his career. The best 3 minutes of his life there at the end of that Lions game. It must be those suits that he was wearing to the game. He finally showed up and played like he was wearing those suits. So it was good to see the Lions pick with victory, much needed victory. They've been struggling for a little while there, but I think, like you said, Philadelphia is they're clicking, they're rolling right now, and I think that they're a much more talented team, top to bottom, than the Redskins are. And I like Wentz more than I like Kirk Cousins. I don't like Ryan Matthews. He always seems to underachieve and get injured, and like we saw at the end of the game, drop the ball. But Jordan Matthews, who doesn't look anything like Doug Baldwin. I will say that I did say that he was Doug Baldwin light, but he's a number one receiver, so I hope Doug doesn't take too much offense to it. Doug, obviously, a way better player than Jordan Matthews is right now. But Jordan Matthews, he's a young guy. He's got some time to come around, and especially with a quarterback like Carson Wentz. Doesn't make a lot of bad decisions, especially for a young guy, which is something that some of the younger guys have done or continue to do throughout the years. So to see him succeed at this level, coming from a no-name school, is big for Wentz and the Philly fan base. So good things coming from Philadelphia. I think they roll to 4-1 this week as well. But speaking of young guys who turn the ball over a lot, we got coming up for the next game after this, the Tennessee Titans taking on the god-awful Cleveland Browns. Who you got in this one?
I don't know if you really have to ask the question of who I got in this one. I'm picking against Cleveland every week this entire season. I don't care if they go out and sign a free agent quarterback that has won every game in his entire career. I'm still picking the other team to win at this point. Cleveland has absolutely no heart whatsoever, and they have just shown nothing this season. So Cody Kessler likely to start for Cleveland. Looks like he's probable, and he's probably going to be thrown in there. Not going to make an impact. Doesn't matter who's starting at quarterback for Cleveland. Doesn't matter who's starting at running back for Cleveland. I don't care if you have the all-star team starting for Cleveland. Something about that team just is not looking right this season. And Tennessee, although they're not very good, they have beat the Lions and showed a little bit more heart than Cleveland has this season. And, Tennessee, I'm all about these Vegas picks today. And Tennessee's a 6-point pick in Vegas. I'm going to say they're going to win by 14. So I'm picking Tennessee easily over Cleveland. And I don't even think we have to break this one down too much in detail because it's pretty much just a given at this point what Cleveland's going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go with you. I would go as far as saying they're going to win by 20. But it depends on which Mariota shows up. If Mariota from last week shows up, 4 touchdowns, no turnovers, then, yeah, it's going to be a blowout. But if Mariota of old that throws interceptions and fumbles like he's Blake Bortles out there, then it's going to be a little closer than some might think. So it all depends on which Mariota shows up, but it's promising. I believe with everything in my heart that Cleveland is in full tank mode to get one of those Deshaun's from this upcoming draft, and they're gunning for that number 1 pick, whether they like it or not. It's not looking good for them, like you said. Even if Cody Kessler plays, the weapons are few and far between. Kroll, Isaiah is their running back. He's pretty good, but outside of that, no Corey Coleman. I think he's still out with the broken hand. And they already don't even have any receivers. Josh Gordon eventually, I think maybe will play it down someday in the NFL. But, without Gordon, without him, you got Terrell Pryor, who's good. Don't get me wrong. I think Terrell Pryor would be, a decent, better than somebody like Jermaine Kearse on a good team. But the Browns just don't have it. It's promising to see that Joe Hayden is back out there running around, one of the best corners in the league, but he can't help this team. The team is just, they're tanking. They're ready to go. I don't even think they believe that they can win at this point. And if, they can't beat the Titans, who's, they're not that impressive either. Although Arakpo is doing a good job on that defense. That defense is kind of like the Jags to me, a very underrated team. Once the offense starts to figure it out, that defense will start getting some recognition because they're good. They're good. And they don't have favorable field position a lot of the time with all the turnovers that the offense has. So DeMarco Murray is having a really, really good year for them. One of their top, if not their top receiver, and also doing a really good job on the ground. He's handling the Mariota growth very well. I believe he's second in rushing, just a tad bit behind Ezekiel Elliott, who's going nuts this year. And, I think, you said it perfectly. It's not even a competition. The Titans are going to take this one easily.
And then we have Baltimore and the New York Giants. I know we always joke about Odell getting caught up in that field goal net, but it looks like him and the field goal net are friends again. After that game in Minnesota, we saw him go up and hug the field goal net. So now that they're on better terms, has Odell kind of gotten past this curse of the field goal net, or is it going to be kind of a slugfest between Baltimore and New York? We saw him release Justin Forsett on the Baltimore side. Now Detroit signs him. It's going to be interesting as far as Detroit goes, whether they're going to start him this Sunday or not. And Justin Forsett just kind of looking to keep his career alive. But then we talked about Baltimore's lack of run game, if you will. And we just haven't seen that much out of it. Sometimes you'll have a guy like West break off for 95 and the next game go off for 20. So it's just kind of hit or miss with Baltimore. And personally, I'm picking the New York Giants in this one. I'm going to say they beat them by, I'll say 7 for this matchup personally. But New York just didn't look like themselves the last couple weeks. And although Eli Manning can light it up and throw to Odell and Sterling Shepard and the trifecta, Victor Cruz over there. They just haven't really looked like themselves lately. And Baltimore, we talked about their lack of run game last week, and I'm just not real sold on Baltimore. So I'm going to say New York comes out, and this is the week that trifecta that you always talk about breaks out, and they pick Baltimore's defense apart. What do you think about this one?
I think that Baltimore is going through a lot of stuff right now. Joe Flacco is having the worst statistical year of his career right now. They just fired their offensive coordinator, Mark Trestman, and hired Marty Mornhinweg. I believe that's how you say his name. But he was the offensive he was the offensive coordinator for the Jets and the Eagles. I don't think he was personally responsible for Vic's resurgence, but he's had a ton of good offenses, top 5, top 10 in the league in his tenure as offensive coordinator for the Jets and the Eagles, and saw huge turnarounds. And, with the way that this Ravens offense was going, it's not hard to see, an improvement. He was the quarterback coach, so hopefully he can figure what's wrong with Joe Flacco out, although, it sounds like he was in charge of what Joe was doing the whole time. So I'm not sure what that will do, but usually it takes time. It takes time to instill new ways of life for teams, but I think it's going to move in a positive direction. But the Giants, eventually they're going to get rolling. This three-headed monster, it takes time. You think about it, and Victor Cruz and Sterling Shepard are brand new to this offense. Cruz has been there a while, but hasn't played for 2 years, almost 2 whole years. So it's going to take them some time, and eventually they're going to click. Eventually Odell's going to get into the end zone, and Cruz is going to be up to full speed and confident. And Shepard, I think he's been doing well. He's probably been performing the best out of all 3 of them on a consistent basis anyways throughout the whole season. But Odell is getting ready to take over, and this could be one of those games where we see Odell. Although this is a top defense, although a defense that lost to the Redskins last week, I was very disappointed about that. But it was all because – well, not all because C.J. Mosley, but Mosley, I don't know what he was thinking when he picked off Kirk Cousins, and then he tried to lay up the ball into the end zone and just should have went out of bounds or something like that, but, caused a touchback. And the Ravens just couldn't capitalize after that. Joe Flacco just not having a good game, and without Steve Smith Sr., I believe that he's out with his, leg injury, whatever that may be. It's going to be rough, tough sledding for the Ravens, and I think that, this is the week, like you said, that the three-headed monster, the receiving core of the Giants gets going, and Eli finally comes through and starts putting up some numbers. So I'm rolling with the Giants as well this week.
Then moving on to Carolina and New Orleans. I know Carolina's the favorite by 2 points. Personally, I'm not really a fan of that pick. Greg Olsen had a big day last week, along with Derek Anderson throwing to him. Derek Anderson didn't look like the Derek Anderson that came in to sub for the last half of that game that we were watching 2 weeks ago. He gets to start, and he just was all over the place, really. And I don't know if he was just nervous to start for the first time in a while or what it was, but Greg Olsen was really the only guy that was making big plays out there and having a big day, and Derek Anderson just couldn't get it done. But Cam, on the other side, he hasn't looked like himself, and I don't know if it's been the repeat concussions this year or what it is, but he just hasn't been putting up big numbers, and he's likely in for this Sunday. He's probable, and he's likely to start, and I just don't think that it's going to make that big of a difference. New Orleans defense, absolutely atrocious so far this year, but they got Drew Brees, who can put up 35, 40 points, and if Carolina can't run drive for drive with them, I say New Orleans takes this one, even though everyone – well, the experts, I don't know what you can consider an expert at this point, but the experts are picking Carolina. I'm going against them, and I'm saying New Orleans pulls this one out.
I'm saying Superman is back. It's time for Cam to come through, and, former reigning MVP is going to do that. I think the biggest thing that nobody's talking about is Jonathan Stewart is back. Fozzie Whitaker did a decent job. Cameron Artis-Payne did a decent job on Monday night, had 2 touchdowns. But Jay Stu is their guy. He's their guy that gets him going. And Cam, and it's no surprise that They pretty much lost every single game that Jay Stu hasn't played. He played that first game against the Broncos, which was a close game, came down to the kicker missing the last-second field goal. But 3 games in a row, Jay Stu's been out nursing his ankle, and they're on 3 during that span. Cam Newton was out, concussion. Don't know how much the concussion in week 1, if he had a concussion week 1. Although I do think that they rattled his cage a little bit, and I believe that played a big part in him not playing this past weekend or this past Monday night game. But, that's neither here nor there. Cam is back, ready to go. Division rivalry, you never know what's going to happen in a game like that. But I think, that Panthers offense needs to get rolling because the defense is playing decent, not great. Gave up 300 yards to Julio. What do you expect? Julio's a very, very, very good player, and Matt Ryan is decent. I don't think that he's that great, but we're getting off the subject here. I think that Cam and Jay Stu are going to have what it takes to take on this awful, awful defense, as you said, and they'll get back in the win column. I think 2 points is mighty generous for this Saints team, especially if Drew doesn't get it going early. Although, Drew Brees is my favorite quarterback outside of Russell Wilson, so I think it's going to be no problem for him to get rolling against anybody. I'll take my chances with Drew Brees any single day of the week. But, Cam and the Panthers are desperate to get a win. They're, in the public eye, in the spotlight, and the reigning runner-ups for the Super Bowl championship, and they need this win more than the Saints do. I think the Saints need another offseason to work on that defense. And the Panthers don't have the luxury to lose out. They have much higher expectations than the Saints do, so I think that they'll take this one.
All right, then moving on to Jacksonville, Chicago. This one, apparently the Bears are going to win by 1.5, which I don't know how they pick these point spreads, the 1.5, 2.5. Just pick a number, and I know that they don't want the push because they're like, all right, if we pick them by 3, something happens that we got to give their money back. But whatever it is, we'll just say Bears by 1.5, so somehow they get an extra point and they give them an extra half point with it. But Jacksonville, I'm saying Jacksonville takes out Chicago, even though the Bears are the favorite in this one. I'm picking Jacksonville, although they're both not looking too good. Chicago, sure, they beat the Lions when the Lions were looking absolutely terrible. I mean, not that the Lions look good now, but really Chicago's only highlight of the season is beating the Lions at this point, and I don't know how you could really pick them against anybody. Even if it's Jacksonville, I think Jacksonville has more playmakers than Chicago does. Alshon Jeffrey is really the only guy in Chicago I think that's really been performing, and I believe he's been injured as well. And now you got Jeremy Langford and guys trying to fill in for Jeremy Langford. I'm just not sold on the Bears' run game. I'm not sold on their pass game at all. I'm not sold on Cutler whatsoever, and then they try to sub other guys in there to start when Cutler's not feeling 100%. It's just kind of looking like a circus over in Chicago, if you ask me. So I'm going to take Jacksonville personally, but is there something that you see that I just don't with Chicago?
With Chicago, Hoyer is a top 5 passer in the league right now, which is out of his league for sure. But it's a weird season in general. So Jordan Howard, I believe, is 130 yards of offense these past 2 weeks. Zach Miller and Eddie Rowe doing a good job of helping out Alshon Jeffrey, and the Bears, they're playing like they want to win. I don't think that they're a team that is a legitimate contender for even a wild card spot, but they're playing like they want to win. And Jarrell Freeman, and the new addition to their defense is very solid. And as a linebacker, has been not making great statistics outside of tackles, but he's a sure tackler and is, I believe, 4th in the league right now in tackles. So the Bears are playing like they want to win. Hoyer's playing like he wants to get a starting job, and with guys like Brock Osweiler and Kirk Cousins out there having starting jobs, why not Hoyer? So I think that the Bears have something to lose in their eyes, and that they believe that they're a really good team. And I think that they're, although their record doesn't show it, that they're out to win some games. And the Jags, Bortles is a turnover machine. I'm not a huge Bortles fan. I got him on my fantasy team, but there's just something about him it's not it. It's similar to Blaine Gabbert, but although he puts up bigger numbers than Blaine Gabbert, the turnovers are really killers. No matter how good you are, Eli Manning will tell you, you turn the ball over, your team's not going to win very many games. And, the Jaguars, their defense is really good. It's getting there, but it's all young guys. Jalen Ramsey is a very good DB coming up in the NFL. He's going to be something to watch for years to come. And Miles Jack, their second pick, is getting more and more playing time. I think they're going slow with him. I had him picked as my rookie of the year for sure, defensive rookie of the year. As soon as they drafted him, I was like, oh, man, he's coming out with a chip on his shoulder. But I think that the Jags are going slow with him. He came out and talked about that degenerative disease, I guess, that he has in his legs, or that will cause him to have microfracture surgery sometime in the future. So I think that they're just trying to come with him slowly. Maybe, his bones and structure comes back slower than the average. So, going slow with him after an injury last year. And then Ngakwe, their third pick, he's really good too. He's leading the team in sacks and is making waves on that defensive line. So, they got a good defensive core going with young guys, and I think that they could use another offseason to add even more talent around that young nucleus that they have, and maybe help Bortles out as he continues to learn. And the Bears just have more to gain from winning this game. So I think that I'm going with the Bears in this one.
Interesting. I would have to disagree with that pick, but I guess we'll see how it plays out. And then on the other side of it, we have LA versus Detroit. Your boy Johnny Hecker going up against this Detroit team that it's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde Lions team this year. And I don't know which one's going to show up to this one, but you got LA. I don't know when Jared Goff is going to come off the bench and start. Although LA is 3-2, they're looking pretty decent, half game behind the Seahawks going into Sunday's matchups. Detroit has Stafford, Marvin Jones, Golden Tate. We mentioned kind of their running game. It looks like Theo Riddick's out, and it's not looking good. Dwayne Washington was sidelined with an ankle injury. The run game just looks like it's hurting. They just went out and desperately signed Justin Forsett, who everybody I know on the Detroit side is excited about. I'm not sure if it's a big signing or not. I know Justin Forsett's a decent back, but Baltimore obviously saw something with him that they didn't like, and they didn't think he could still compete, and end up releasing him, and then the Lions go out and sign him. But at this point, I feel like you might as well sign Justin Forsett. If Dwayne Washington can't get the job done, Theo Riddick's injured, you got Amir Abdullah out for the season. They're just kind of hurting at the running back position. But I think Stafford is more of a passer who can carry the team through the air anyway. And although LA's defense has had some big games, like the one against Seattle where they gave up 6 points the entire game, it was an embarrassment, but it was an injured Russell Wilson. I think Detroit can win this one. And I think against the Rams, I know the Rams always play tough against Detroit, and I think Detroit can beat them through the air with Marvin Jones and Golden Tate going deep, and they can find different guys. Anquan Bolden has actually produced way more than I thought he would on this team. And you got LA, who it's just one of those things that you never know what kind of defense is going to show up. Johnny Hecker, you mentioned, was that MVP in the Seahawks game, pinning them down inside the 5 every punt. But then you have other games where LA gives up 28 to the 49ers. And then you have games where they give up over 30 to Jameis Winston and the Buccaneers. So whatever LA defense is going to show up to this one is going to determine the outcome of this game. I'm kind of hesitant to pick Detroit because every time I pick them, they end up losing. And it sounds like every time you pick them, they win. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say the Lions take this one. If they end up failing me, I'm not going to be happy about it. So any Detroit management, players, anything else watching this podcast, you better freaking perform on Sunday or else I'm not going to be happy about it. I'm picking the Lions in this one, and I say they win it by a touchdown. What about you?
I think that you're right in the sense that the Lions will perform. I think that they will be in midseason form. Stafford, obviously, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion. Marvin Jones has been a tremendous addition to the team. He's been balling out. It'd be nice to see him get some help. I believe Eric Ebron is their second top receiver. They're going to need Golden Tate to step up. And, Golden was tremendous for us in Seattle. We loved him. We still love him. I do anyways. I would love to have him back. But, he's a guy that has to step up, with Calvin out and Marvin stepping up, Ebron playing his part. Somebody else has to come help him out, especially with the run game looking like it is. Theo Riddick's doing an okay job, but, not topping the league. I think that I know that position is open for grabs, and I think Dwayne Washington could grab it if he's healthy. He's a guy that can run. He's got a quick step. I believe he ran a 4.40 at the combine, and he can catch passes. But the big knock on him in college was he put the ball on the ground too much, and you just can't do that. Christine Michael for the Seahawks does that, and some people are not huge fans of that, and you can't have turnovers in the NFL, especially as a running back. Definitely unacceptable for that. And so if he can get better at ball security, I think things will go well for Dwayne Washington. I really like what he had when he was at the University of Washington. And I think that he could take over that position. But on the other side of the ball, the Rams are looking atrocious on offense. Case Keenum is the main reason that they are atrocious on offense. And I think Goff is going to make an appearance one of these times. I don't know when, but Goff is going to come out. He has to. Case Keenum is awful. And, Todd Gurley is feeling the effects of it more than anything. 2.7 yards per carry, one of the worst statistical running backs in the league. And I believe Gurley is one of the best running backs in the league. Top 10 in my eyes. And Keenum just can't get it done. Kenny Britt is having a resurgence to his career, having a very good year. He's above the 350 mark for receiving yards this season through week 5, and Tavon Austin has been the invisible man. 4 years, $42 million. There's a lot of money to give anybody, but to a guy that's under 10 yards per catch it's a little steep for me. I don't know. Maybe they keep feeling bad that they put Tavon out with this quarterback and this offense to not be able to get him into open space. But throughout his whole career, outside of the return game, I haven't seen Tavon be deserving of over $10 million a year. Prove me wrong if you must. I think he's a very good player, but with this offense, he's not worth $10 million in my eyes. So, it's going to be interesting to see what that offense does when they finally go to Goff, because it needs to happen soon. And right now, the highlight of their team is their special teams. The defense isn't doing that much work. They rely on Aaron Donald and Robert Quinn on that defensive line to produce sacks. I think they're only at 2 apiece. Robert Quinn coming off of that back surgery, and NBA fans know that Dwight Howard took a long time. I think he's still recovering from 2012 back surgery. So, not saying that Quinn is a young guy. So I think that he may heal faster than Dwight, but the production just isn't there right now for whatever reason. And same with Aaron Donald. Not sure what his ailments are, but 2 sacks is not going to get it done against some of these top tier teams. Not that the Lions are a top tier team, but you have to get to Stafford if you're going to beat the Lions. That's the running game for the Lions is rarely going to beat anybody. And if they're going to beat you, they're going to beat you with Stafford's arm. And if you're not getting to Stafford and you give him all day, he's going to pick you apart no matter what team you are. But the special teams for the Rams is what's been carrying them this far this season. Greg Zuerlein, who had an atrocious year last year, 20 for 30 for field goals. That's inexcusable. To get a second chance after that is a blessing, and he's perfect this year. 9 for 9, doing a great job kicking field goals, and then Johnny doing work as a hit the punter. 16 punts inside the 20, leading the league as usual. 3 inside the 10, and so they have the field position. They have the defense. It's the reason they were number 1 in the NFC West for so long before getting knocked off last week. But, they have to produce outside of special teams. It's just the way of life. It's great when your special teams is playing great as, Johnny, Greg, and some of those other guys are. But when your offense isn't rolling and your defense isn't producing the big numbers that you usually expect from them, it's hard to win games. But more than anything, the NFL needs the Rams to win this game. They need for their international games. The Giants and the Rams will be facing each other in London in week 7, and they have to produce. They have to win. And the NFL is known for sending over not not very good matchups, not very good teams, and this is the last one. They sent the Colts and Jags over there earlier, which is an absolute joke. I'd be so upset if, I had to pay, $150 or whatever it is to go watch the Jags and the Colts. And, to see two mediocre teams and the Giants and the Rams, if they lose this week, it'd be, just the same. So I know that they're sending the Texans down to Mexico later this year, which, they thought J.J. Watt would be able to be on display, but, he's out for the year. And so this is really the only matchup that the NFL has left to look forward to for international games, and it's not looking promising at this point. So I think I'm going to go with the Rams just because I feel like the NFL has something invested in the Rams winning.
I mean, I'm still going to stick with my pick with Detroit, but, we'll see what happens for that one. And I know we've differed on a bunch of these picks. We're not going to – well, at least I have a feeling we're not going to differ on these picks. Pittsburgh and Miami. I'm going with Pittsburgh easy in this one. Ben Roethlisberger looking like a cannon is in his arm. Throwing to Sammy Coates. Sammy Coates tearing it up. You got Antonio Brown. People are going to double and triple cover Antonio Brown's going to leave open Sammy Coates, Marcus Wheaton, and the rest of those guys on that side of the ball. And I just don't think Miami's secondary is good enough to compete with these kind of receivers. And I know Sammy Coates, there were kind of some questions about him of whether he would surface over Marcus Wheaton, and I think he just proved that he's a better option than Marcus Wheaton last week as he just went off. And Roethlisberger throwing to receivers like Antonio Brown, once they start picking up Antonio Brown, he's like, all right, I'm going to go to Coates, I'm going to go to Wheaton. Got plenty of options out here, and then you got Le'Veon Bell in the backfield. So if they're going to hand it off to Le'Veon Bell, he's just going to run all over that Miami defense. And I know we mention every week that Miami defense with Williams and with Sue, I don't know what these guys are getting paid for. I know Sue's having a decent year, but that defense as a whole, there's so much money invested into that defense, and Miami has just looked horrible ever since they left Seattle. And they held the Seahawks to 12 points, and ever since then, they've just gotten shredded by everybody. So Pittsburgh's not going to be an exception in this one. I don't think Tannehill's going to go out and beat the Pittsburgh defense either. We saw Pittsburgh's defense just shut down KC completely, and KC has a decent team. And they just went out and had them have a completely quiet day and just ripped them to shreds. So Miami, I'm saying the Steelers win this one easily by 21, even though they're only picked by 7. With those Vegas picks, I just don't see Tannehill coming out and doing much against Pittsburgh, and I think Pittsburgh is just going to have a day.
I think that you are pretty close in your prediction. The Steelers, man, when you have Antonio Brown and you have Le'Veon Bell, defenses don't know what to do. You don't know if you got a triple team Antonio Brown, and then you have to watch out for Sammy Coates, who's emerging. Big Ben can pick you apart. He's one of the greats of this generation. He's a winner. That's what Big Ben does. Comes through in the clutch, and Steelers defense is Steelers defense. It's physical, and the Dolphins, on the other hand, I don't think that they even know who they are. They're spending over $20 million per year to have Cameron Wake, Mario Williams, and Ndamukong Suh on that defensive line that a lot of experts believe would lead them to the promised land. It would lead them to the Super Bowl and AFC favorites. But at 1-4, we're not seeing it yet. And eventually one of these weeks they're going to figure it out and play together and do well. But Mario Williams, no sacks this year. Sue is 2.5, and those three combined have combined for 3.5 sacks on the season. And there's individual players that are pretty good that have at least 4. So I don't know what that defense is doing. I don't know what that team is doing. And if you're a team that doesn't even know your identity, there's no way you're going to beat a team such as this Pittsburgh Steelers that's just rolling on all cylinders. Didn't miss a beat when Le'Veon Bell stepped back in the lineup, and I don't think that he's reached pay dirt yet on the ground. And I think this is a game that Le'Veon goes crazy. So I'm rolling with the Steelers too.
All right. Well, at least we're on the same page for that one, right? Moving on to KC and Oakland. This is kind of an interesting matchup because you got Oakland, who they're kind of a surprise this season. I like to say they're kind of getting lucky a little bit when they're going for 2 winning games and just pulling out random plays all the time that they just I don't know how their record is so good this year because I would not pick Oakland. Their defense is pretty solid. Bruce Irvin on that side. You got Shalik Calhoun on the Raiders defense, and they really have some young talent on that side that is actually performing. But then on the other side of the ball, you have Derek Carr, who decent quarterback. He's looked okay for the offense for the Raiders, but I really think the Raiders defense is what is winning them games at this point. It's just one of those things. The Oakland defense in previous years has just not looked good, given up games right at the end, or they just gotten absolutely destroyed from the beginning. So maybe this is a new Oakland team, and I know a lot of people are saying playoffs. I don't know if we're there yet with the Raiders because they are a team that historically has a tendency to start out real well. I believe they started out real well last year, the year before, and then they just kind of tanked it at the end of the season and missed the playoffs. So Oakland, KC, you got Alex Smith trying to do his thing over in Kansas City, and Jamal Charles is kind of, you never know if he's healthy or not, and I don't know if you can really put all your eggs into one basket with Kansas City, but I'm not really sold on Oakland either, although I am going to pick Oakland in this particular matchup. It's just kind of a tough matchup for me to pick a winner because it's one of those things. It's one of those matchups that both of these teams, although Oakland is looking pretty good record-wise, I just think one of these times they're going to slip up, but I'm picking them this week against Kansas City because I'm not sold on KC at all either.
I'm with you. I'm not sold on KC, but I have to take Jamal Charles' word for it. Charles says he's 100%, fresh off a bye week. I know he got a couple touches in the game before, but he says he's 100%. I have to go with him. I'm not an Alex Smith fan at all. I hate the checkdowns. He never goes deep. You know, he's got any. I feel like he's wasting the talent such as Jeremy Maclin. Maclin is a guy that is a deep threat of all deep threats. And, you know, when it was Maclin on one side and Deshaun Jackson on the other side in Philadelphia, it was, you know, all day, just speedsters. But I feel like Maclin, when he took the money, you know, nothing against him, just he accepted that fate that, you know, Alex Smith, when he stretched the field or when he tried to stretch the field with San Francisco through a lot of turnovers, now that he's, you know, Mr. Checkdown, he cut back on those turnovers and throws a decent amount of touchdowns. Definitely not up with the elite numbers, but you know it doesn't take a great quarterback to win a Super Bowl. You can ask Trent Dill for that. You just have to maintain a game, and so I think Alex Smith does a good job of maintaining games. And so if Jamal Charles is healthy as he says, he can beat any team. You know, a couple years back, you know, dominated the Seattle Seahawks single-handedly, and you know they're perennially one of the best defenses of the NFL every single year. So if Jamal Charles is able to do that, rush for over 100, over 2 touchdowns, I think that, you know, a talent like him is greater than any matchup that it's against him. And so I think that he's healthy, and the Raiders, you know, although they're 4-1, have outplayed their expectations. Derek Carr has had a great connection with Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper. So, you know, that connection is there, and they're having much success with that 3-headed rushing attack that they've been using. Probably not fantasy owners' favorite thing to do, but whatever. It wins games, and, you know, they're 4-1 behind it. So the offense is really, really rolling. That defense is absolutely atrocious. I don't know why it's atrocious. They have really good players, you know, such as you said on it. So I think that, you know, there's nothing wrong with you rolling with the Raiders, but I think just, you know, I'm just going to go with my gut feeling, and I'm going with Jamal Charles and saying that I hope that he didn't lie to me. And so I'm going with him and saying that he leads the Chiefs to victory this week.
All right. Interesting pick there. And then we're moving on to Cincy in New England. AJ Green probable for this one, but he's likely going to play. New England looking pretty good since Tom Brady came back. And for this one, is there really anything outside of, you know, that AJ Green to Andy Dalton connection that is going to be able to beat New England? I know that defense with Pac-Man Jones and Vontez on the other side, Vontez Burfict. They can play pretty well sometimes, but at times also Cincy will just come out and these guys will just get burned. And I saw Adam Jones give up a few touchdowns last week, and maybe it was one touchdown on his credit that he got absolutely burned on, and he didn't look real happy about it. And Pac-Man Jones probably has a short temper, so it's probably not a good thing when he starts getting burned. But with the emergence of Martellus Bennett with New England, now you have kind of that dual tight end threat with Martellus Bennett and Rob Gronkowski. Is there any way that Cincy wins this game? I know New England is a 6.5-point favorite down there in Vegas. Should we go put some money on Cincy? I'm going to go ahead and take New England easy for this one. But is there a way that Cincy can win this game?
No. It's plain and simple. There's no way that they can win this game. Without Tyler Eifert, this team is nothing like it looked last season, and every single Bengals fan will tell you that. You look at the top three scorers offensively for the Bengals last year: A.J. Green, Tyler Eifert, and I'll let you guess the third one. I'll give you a big hint. He's your boy in Detroit.
Marvin Jones.
Yes, sir.
It's my guy.
Marvin Jones was he was their third option for passing through the air last year and made Andy Dalton a decent, very, very good quarterback. And, we're seeing, Dalton without his weapons, it's tough to not have, your security blanket. 13 touchdowns last year for Eifert, and he hasn't been there this year. Nursing his injuries. I believe he's out this week. And, on top of all that, it's tough to beat the Patriots in Foxborough. So, Tom Brady's back and rolling. He's making awful receivers look like superstars. Chris Hogan looks like the new Danny Amendola. So it's impossible to beat the Patriots in Foxborough. The Seahawks have the tough task of going to do that. Probably it'll snow on them again and later this season. But I don't think they don't have the firepower. The defense, Drake Kirkpatrick, Adam Jones, all back and healthy. I think that they can slow him down. I don't think that Brady will go for 406 and 4 touchdowns, but I wouldn't put it past him. He's one of the greats in the game, and you talk about Jamal Charles being a guy that you could start him over any matchup. Tom Brady is the exact same. However you look at him, cheater or not, he's a great quarterback, gets it done, and like I said, great quarterbacks always find a way to make no-name players look amazing, and Chris Hogan looked like that, and he's done that with Danny Woodhead, Danny Amendola. Got a good thing going with Danny's. Martellus Bennett, 3 touchdowns last week. And, I don't see this team stopping the Patriots in Foxborough. Not happening.
And then moving on to Atlanta, Seattle. Pick is Seattle by 6 in this one. I'm saying Seattle wins it by 3. I say it's a high-scoring kind of day for both teams. And, although it's projected to be thunderstorms out there, heavy rain, I think Atlanta's offense, that's more of a weakness for Atlanta, because I think Seattle can run the ball a little bit more than Atlanta, and Atlanta relies more on that pass. And they got Mohamed Sanu on the other side, outside of Julio Jones. And now Julio Jones is that big kind of focus point for Atlanta that everyone's going to go to after he just tore apart Carolina's offense or Carolina's defense for 300 yards. And now we have Seattle going out there trying to play in the rain, and they're going to try some things with that run game. Thomas Rawls out again. Christian Michael Sr. is probably going to try to do his thing on the other side, and hopefully Seattle can run over Atlanta's defense. And I know it's just going to be one of those games. It's going to be simple or similar to the Minnesota game where it was like -15. It's just going to be one of those days where anything can happen, because when it's pouring rain, you're playing in the lake. It's just kind of going to be one of those days at the beach where you're just going to be throwing the ball around in the water, and it doesn't really matter skill if you're playing underwater, because you're not going to have a whole lot of speed. And I think it can go one of two ways. I'm going to say it's going to go the high-scoring route, because defense can slip up with that heavy rain, and they might not be able to get their footing to keep up with the receivers, or you're going to get a low-scoring game where nobody can move the ball at all. And I'm going to say it's the first one. I say Seattle ends up winning like a 35-32 game or something along those lines. What do you think?
I don't think that you're correct.
Oh.
No, I don't think that you're not correct. I think that, this is what Seattle does. Seattle takes on the top tier offenses and makes them look mediocre at best. The Denver Broncos brought in the greatest, apparently, offense of all time, and Seattle just throttled them. Was no issue at all. And, the defense is still based virtually the same defense that we saw. If I'm going to be nitpicky, not that the defense is playing awful, but, it would be nice to see Cliff Averill get some more stats. It would be nice to see Mike Bennett get some more sacks. Things like that. Not that they need to. They're playing great defense right now. And, that's not throwing the word great around. They are playing great defense. They've been playing great defense for, 5 years strong. And, still a young core of guys. Richard Sherman always playing great. So, I'm excited to see that matchup with Julio Jones. I believe we remember that vividly the year before we won the Super Bowl. I believe it was Roddy White, not Julio, that, made Sherman fall and scored a big touchdown against him. And Sherman's come to play ever since that play. That's been a huge turning point. I think he was playing – I know he was playing very great before that, but, that he's been shutting people down since then. A great showing between him and Brandon Marshall. Again, one of the top receivers in the league. But don't think for a second that just because Brandon Marshall was able to, produce some stats on Sherman, that just anybody can. Brandon Marshall is a different type of receiver, a lot bigger, faster, stronger than, people lead on to believe. And, with a good quarterback, Brandon Marshall is, he's up there, top 3 in the league in my eyes. With a good quarterback right now, top 10 for sure, but I don't think he's touching top 5 right now. But nonetheless, creates matchup problems. Julio, not so much. Julio has trouble staying on the field, and if it's raining, as some may think, it's hard to pass for a lot of yards in the rain. It's turned into a running game, and that leads into Seattle's strength. Their pass defense is really good, but their run defense is what's been keeping them afloat all these years. And so I don't think that Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman can break loose on this Seattle defense. I don't think that 100-yard rushes are a common thing for the Seahawks defense to give up. I think that maybe the 49ers did because it was such a blowout that they started trying to run the clock out and whatnot. And I think they got a 100-yard rusher, but unless it's a blowout or something like that, it's not something that the Seahawks defense does. And it's hard. You know better than anybody. You go to all the games. It's hard to beat the Seahawks in CenturyLink Field. So I don't think that it's going to be a high-scoring game for the Falcons. It depends on which offense shows up. I'm hoping and praying that C.J. Spiller gets some more carries this week. I'm not confident at all in Christine Michael's ability to hold on to the rock, especially in the rain. Ask anybody, it's just a different feel to the football. Tom Brady knows it best, just a different feel to the football with the weather changes out there. So it'll be interesting to see, how much more playing time C.J. Spiller gets, especially after that bye week. Definitely Russell Wilson. I'm happy he got a chance to rest a little bit during that bye week. No matter, even though he didn't show during that Jets game that knee and that ankle were ailing him, I know that it was something that he definitely took care of, and to not have contact on that leg and on those ankles for an extra week is big, especially at the perfect time early on in the season. So if Fetty Wap, hopefully he can keep Russell upright. The addition of him will be huge. I like what I saw out of him against the Jets. I like what I saw out of everybody against the Jets. But the Falcons are coming in a lot better team than the Jets on a serious note. Their defense isn't overly impressive. Trufant is trying his best at DB, but that team is one of the easier teams to pass on. And with that Russell to Jimmy Graham connection that's growing week after week, I'm loving what I'm seeing. I think that the Seahawks will handle this one easy. I think 2 touchdowns victory is not hard to see for this one.
All right, and then Dallas and Green Bay. We'll go through these last 3 pretty quick. You got Dallas and Green Bay. Green Bay at 5.5-point favorite against Dallas. Green Bay, like you said last week, not looking like themselves lately, but can they get it done against Dallas? And can Dallas continue their hot streak against Green Bay? I know Lambeau Field is going to be a tough one to play in, but does Dallas go in there and pull out a win, or does Green Bay fulfill that 5.5-point favorite? I'm going to go with Green Bay winning this one, but maybe you can prove me wrong if you're going to pick Dallas. What do you think?
I will say that I'm excited to see what Ezekiel Elliott is going to do against the #1 rated rush defense in the league. They only give up 44 yards a game, and Ezekiel Elliott's the #1 rusher in the league. So #1 rusher against the #1 rush defense is going to be an exciting game to watch. We got to see what Aaron Rodgers can do. I'm not sure what's going on with him. I'm not a huge Aaron Rodgers fan, but he's always up there with the elite quarterbacks. Quarterback rating generally around the 100 mark. Same with Russell Wilson. They're usually the two that have been above the 100 mark every single year for the past 3-4 years. And so to not see him produce the same, I'm not sure what it is. It's not like his receivers have changed that much. Randall Cobb's doing a decent job. Jordy Nelson also doing a decent job. Nobody really there to help them though. Richard Rodgers hasn't really gotten to a great start, and the security blanket tight end just hasn't been really going for Aaron Rodgers. So maybe that's something that's really affecting him. I like that Devontae Adams finally stepped up last week and had a decent game. I thought maybe that's what was missing for him. But, again, not a huge game. Threw 2 picks in that game as well. So I think that, the Cowboys got a good thing going with Prescott. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. The defense looks atrocious as always. The Cowboys defense has been their downfall for a long time now. But I'm excited to see Ezekiel versus the Packers defense. But since you chose the Packers, I'm just going to go with the Cowboys just because I think it's a toss-up. But, it's hard to go against the Packers playing in Lambeau. It's one of those places where home field advantage is a big one. And so I'm going to roll with the Cowboys on this one. But, I like your Packers pick.
We have Indy and Houston. Houston, the pick by 3.5 in this one. The J.J. Wattless Houston Texans going up against the hapless Indianapolis Colts. I think Indy pulls this one out personally. I'm just not real sold on Houston, although they're looking a little bit better than people thought they would. I'm just not sold on Houston at all, even though Indianapolis has looked terrible. I think Indianapolis's offense comes alive in this one and exposes that Texans defense and ends up pulling one out. I say Indianapolis wins by 3, maybe 7. But what do you think in this one, Houston or Indy?
I think I'm going to have to go with Indy too. I'm not convinced that this is the #1 pass defense in the NFL and the Houston Texans. I don't know. I don't see it. But I will say about the Texans defense, I am impressed with Jadeveon Clowney. He's a guy that I said needed to step up and step up. He has. Although he only has 19 tackles, 2 sacks this season. Way different numbers than what you'd expect from J.J. Watt. He does have 8 tackles for loss, which leads the NFL. So I'm liking what I'm seeing out of Jadeveon Clowney. But, that taking away an all-pro defensive end off of this defense is on any defense is huge. Impossible to replace. And, Sam Bradford proved it. 270 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Sam Bradford is not an overly impressive quarterback in my eyes. So to see somebody go like that against the #1 pass defense in the NFL shows me that they're not for real. And Andrew Luck is much, much better quarterback than Bradford thinks he is. And so I think that, him and T.Y. Hilton will have another big day. Hilton stepping up lately, averaging a touchdown and 130 yards per game the last 3 games of the season. So him and Luck really got something special going. And I see that offense has been rolling. It's the defense that's been absolutely awful. And, Brock Osweiler, I think, is trash, to be honest with you. I think that he's not a good quarterback at all. I don't think that he should be getting paid what he's paid. And Lamar Miller suffered greatly last game as they were getting blown out early from the Vikings, only 8 rushes, 20 yards, and they had to rely on the arm of Brock Osweiler, which on any week looked awful. I think he's 19 for 42. Was around the 180-yard mark, and it was easy to see how the Vikings just throttled them. So although the Colts defense isn't as strong as the Vikings defense, I think that the Colts will handle them. It'll be by a touchdown, I think.
All right, and then the last matchup, New York Jets and Arizona. The Jets starting Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't think there's much more to say about that one. Arizona, David Johnson looking like David Johnson of last year. He's going off against people and putting up big numbers. And then you got Larry Fitzgerald, who he's been that consistent receiver that we saw from last year, coming out and just performing. There was one year that he didn't have a quarterback that could throw him the ball, and this year has proven that he is that guy. He's that #1 receiver. And then you got John Brown, who is hit or miss on the other side, but Carson Palmer likely to start this one, probable, and I'm just going to go with Arizona for this one. I'm not picking New York against a whole lot of teams at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in the beginning of the season, I had the Cardinals the number 2 secondary in the league, and you know, Patrick Peterson is off to a good start, 2 picks already. Marcus Cooper, 3 picks for that team. The defense is putting up very good stats. Marcus Golden and Chandler Jones combined 10.5 sacks on that defensive line, and they're coming around. I think that they need this win to make it legitimate that their record and you know, they had a rough start to the season, but you know, this is a very, very good Arizona Cardinals team. Bruce Arians is a very good coach, and I thought it was weird that they were at the bottom of the NFC West, and I'm not going to be surprised at all when they finish number 2 right behind the Seahawks. But you know, this is a game that they have to win, and it'll be embarrassing to lose a team like the Jets. You know, Fitzpatrick just can't seem to hit anybody on his team, and losing a guy such as Eric Decker is big. I know Quincy Enunwa has stepped up in Decker's absence, and I just don't think that they have what it takes to beat, you know, this defense. David Johnson looking great. John Brown doing his best David Blaine impression, just disappearing between games. So I'm not sure where he's been at, but they need him to reemerge quickly. It's his 3rd year in the league, and they need something else. Michael Floyd is another guy who's disappeared. Been doing his best job doing a disappearing act at their receiver, and it's just Larry Fitzgerald. And I guess that's a credit to Larry Fitz, is just having a great career, great player, and you know, is off to another very good year. So somebody needs to help him out, and I think that Carson Palmer, if he is going to have a good game, this is it. You know, this is one of the worst passing defenses in the league. But on the other hand, I think that Darrelle Revis also needs a big game. You know, talking about him in the national spotlight anyway. I'm sure Jets fans, maybe they've seen him lock somebody up. You know, you look back last week, and Antonio Brown had 9 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown. Not Sammy Coates numbers, you know, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns, pretty close to that. But, you know, Darrelle Revis needs to get in the national spotlight and you know, get a pick 6 or something like that to make Revis Island a thing again. So I think that it'll be an interesting matchup, but I think the Cardinals will take this one.
All right, and that just wraps it up for the Revolutionary Sports Show, Week 6, NFL picks of the week. We'll be back next week. I'm Brian Duchaine.
And I'm Corey Sullivan. See you later.
See ya.